So let me just see how it works because I've never been able to connect it to my YouTube channel before.
Okay.
So let's see how this works. It's loading right now.
Okay. So what happens, Vera? All of a sudden, a lot of people will pop in?
Yeah, they'll just see me that Vera's on live and they'll all start just joining in.
See how it works because I've never been able to connect it to my YouTube channel.
You're repeating.
Yeah.
Okay.
My YouTube channel before.
Okay.
So how this works?
Oh yeah, there's a delay, isn't there?
Mm. Okay. So what happens, Vera? All of a sudden, a lot of people will pop in?
Yeah, they'll just see me that Vera's on live and they'll all start just joining in.
See how it works because I've never been able to connect it to my YouTube channel.
You're repeating.
Yeah. Let
Okay.
me try to figure out why it's repeating. It shouldn't be doing that.
Oh yeah.
We should have Frank.
Yeah.
Mm.
He knows about it.
So what happens, Vera? All of a sudden, a lot of people will pop in?
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll just see me that Vera's on live and they'll all start just joining.
Maybe it's me.
Maybe. Do you have your phone there or something?
No, my phone's hung up.
Your phone is hung up.
Okay.
Let me try to figure out why it's repeating. It shouldn't be doing that.
We should have Frank.
Yeah.
Mm.
He knows about
So
it.
what happens, Vera? All of a sudden, a lot of people will pop in?
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll just see me that Vera's on live and they'll all start just joining.
Maybe it's me.
Yeah, it could be on your side.
Or something.
No, my phone's hung up.
Let me see something with
Let me
stop
try to figure out why it's repeating.
It shouldn't be doing that.
We should have Frank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
In theory,
knows
this should be
about it.
So what
working
happens,
perfectly.
Vera? All of a sudden, a lot of people will pop in?
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll just see me that Vera's on
Vera,
live.
do you want me to call Frank? I could call him. Maybe he can help.
Okay.
What do you think? Oh, maybe I think you did it there. Can you hear me? We lost sound. No sound. I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfectly.
Awesome, good, good. All right, so let's see, you should be on YouTube as well. So
Okay.
let me see if that's how that's linking in. Yeah, there we are, we're on YouTube as well. Okay, great. So you're actually being seen, right? You can be seen on YouTube right now.
Great. Okay.
Okay, so let me just write down counsel for you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfectly. No, Vera, it's doing the same thing again.
All right, so let's see, you should be on YouTube as well.
Okay.
Let me see if that, I don't know. Okay, so maybe I have to mute YouTube. Can you hear me?
Perfectly, yeah.
Okay. So what I'm thinking is the audio for YouTube doesn't want to stay connected to Zoom. This is why I'm glad we got together early so that we could troubleshoot.
Yeah. Has this happened before?
I've never been able to connect this way. So this is the first time being able to actually do it this way. So, and I'm so glad that I see that it almost works. So if this kicks off perfectly, then now I actually know how to use this system. So I'll be really happy if that's the case.
You know what I would love to do, Vera, too? We could do, let's do another one. And for everybody who bought Chrysalia, I always, since we can't do a physical, book explication, maybe
Right.
we could do it online.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Okay.
I mean, there are so many layers of meaning, so many references to myth and religion.
Right.
And it's so, and it's the characters in there are actually metaphors of real council people. It's a lifting of hands and a flower for Dorothy. You're in it.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
were in a flower for Dorothy.
Exactly. It'll be wonderful to be able to do a group
Maybe
discussion.
we could do it online.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Oh God, Vera, I hope this isn't going to happen during the interview.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
many
let me
references
see.
to myth and religion.
Right.
And it's so, and it's the characters in there are actually metaphors of real council people. It's a lifting of hands and a flower for Dorothy. You're in it.
Okay, great. So now I see that it's working on YouTube, so I'll be able to have a conversation with you. It's just delayed, okay?
Sure.
All right, great, great. So, I also wanted to put your name and your book.
Okay.
Okay, great. So let me just pin that, and then I'll pin that. Awesome. Good. All right. So I'm not sure how, I see this on YouTube. I'm not sure if it's recording as a live feed, but however it is, it'll come up by tomorrow too. So,
Okay.
yeah. So, all right. So my guest is probably one of the most important people in my life. Hi, Queen Beauty. We have people coming in, so that's great. How are you? Let me just give a few, like a minute more, okay, so that people can come in. How
Sure.
are you, Queen Beauty? Good? Good to see you. I have a special guest today that I want to share with you guys, so I'm really excited about him joining us. Yes. Okay, great. So we're going to go in and we're going to speak to, again, someone who is probably one of the most important people in my life. He's a mentor of not only myself, but of thousands of people around the world. I had the privilege of getting to know this special person. He's like a second father to me. My biological father even loves him and approves of him. This is a man who was my teacher in high school. He taught me mythology. And isn't that funny, with the work that I do, the mythology end of it ended up coming into the work that I do today. Little did I know. So he taught me mythology, and he also taught me how to learn to understand people that are different than me. And so not only did he do that for me, but he did that for thousands of other people. So I just want to really quickly introduce him to you guys. He has an organization that I have been a part of since high school that has changed the lives of thousands of people. He deals with prison reform. He's like a father to young people, even older people that are imprisoned. He visits the prisons every Friday for decades, right? And tries to assist them through understanding of how they got there and how it is that they can come back into the world and into the system and be productive and not add to the recidivism that we see of a lot of people ending up going back into the institutions. He doesn't just do that just to do it. He does it because he understands the environment that nurtures someone going into the prison system and also staying there. Additionally, he assisted so many of us to understand racial tensions and how it is through the comprehension of everyone and the walk that they've been through, how it is that we can understand one another and work together to change things. He has changed the lives of thousands. And I know that his work through the Council for Unity, that is what it is called, that can change the world. It can change the world if it is applied and if people get to know the organization. So Robert DeSena, I'm just gonna call you that right now, but he's like my father. He's my Italian dad, I call him. Okay, can you say hello to the audience?
Hi, everybody. I don't know how I can live up to what Vera has said, but she is like a daughter to me, and they call Council for Unity the program of miracles. And I hope through this interview tonight that you will discover why.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about you before Mr. Robert DeSena was a teacher. He was an English teacher. I mentioned a mythology teacher. So that is kind of how it segued into the organization that you started when you saw a need in Brooklyn, New York, near the Marlborough Projects and Canarsie, Brooklyn as well. So
Bensonhurst.
yes, when I went to John Dewey High School, it was a very kind of segregated area in Brooklyn, but everyone went to this one high school where all the races came from their different areas and came together. So you can imagine the tension that ensued by everyone coming and not really understanding one another, the tension that ensued. So, Mr. DeSena,
You can call me Bob. You can call me Bob.
Yes, Bob. Before I went to John Dewey High School in the 70s, you were able to institute this program. Can you please tell us why? What was the environment that made it necessary for you to use your tools when it comes to unity to bring people together and create this organization?
Well, to be honest, Vera, there really wasn't a plan or even a name called Council for Unity. John Dewey High School was an innovative school, and a tremendous amount of freedom and responsibility was given to students. So security was very lax. If kids wanted to leave the building and go out for lunch, they could do it. And what nobody really anticipated, and this was a problem throughout the city, once you start transitioning from neighborhood schools and integrating them, there has to be some preparation for the different cultures who are going to come together so that they can assimilate and that they can communicate. That didn't happen. So now you force different cultures and different races together in an environment where they have no history with one another. And of course, they're influenced by the media and by a whole bunch of other things. And so John Dewey went through a period of violence. A lot of intruders were coming into the building, and it reached a critical point where if something wasn't done, we would have lost the experiment. So I got recruited by the principal, by the UFT, by the student government to try and create something that would stop this. And I recruited from the different cultures and races in the building, and I recruited the leadership, people who I knew would have influence in the cafeteria and on the different floors in the building. Because without that, it would just be something idealistic with no influence. It was really, really rough. You can imagine what those first few meetings were like. It's very similar in prison when I brought all the gangs together. They didn't come in there and say, oh, wow, this is great. We're going to have a unity model and we're all going to hold hands. It was like, what am I doing here? And I don't want to be here. And it took a long time, but finally it clicked. And after a year, a miracle happened. They turned into a band of brothers. And all of a sudden, the violence in the school diminished. And so did a lot of the racism and hatred of immigrants and hatred of different cultures. And the school itself, the kids themselves began to realize something that they never discovered in their American history courses. You know, we've been told that we're a pluralistic society, that we're a melting pot, but that's not part of our reality. You go into any school and you go into the cafeteria, kids self-segregate. They're not sitting all together. They are by intention isolating themselves from one another. So we had to look at that demographic and then recruit people of influence to stop the violence. So at the end of the year, the general population saw a benefit to a unity model that they never saw or experienced in the history books. Wow, if this Council for Unity, you bring everybody together, there's nobody left to fight. So the first byproduct was, wow, through this thing, I am safe. And the second thing was, since our original members were Black and Latino and Italian American and Asian and Jewish and so on, it was like, if you bring everybody together, there's nobody left to make fun of. So I'm deriving two huge benefits here. I'm safe and nobody's making fun of me anymore. And so at the end of that year, I really thought that this was just an experiment and that it was going to end because we solved the problem. And to the credit of the original members, they said, no, this must continue. If we break up now, you'll never get anybody back to the table. We need to create something. And the other thing was a deeper vision that, hey, if this could work for us as former enemies and former racists, and this could work for us, it's too good for us to keep. Others should benefit from this. So let's create something that is really going to make a change and can make a change. And that's how we got started.
Wow. So initially it was just to settle the racial fighting that was going on at the time. The intention wasn't to broaden the spectrum of
No.
Okay, right.
No, I mean, again, the people ask me this all the time. They think I woke up one morning and said, hey, I got a great idea. Let's create a concept called Council for Unity and shape it into a set of codes that can work. That wasn't the case at all. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Wow. All I knew was I had the ability to influence some really hardcore kids, and that worked. And then all of a sudden, the magic began. Initially, they were meeting for like an hour. And then as they began to experience one another, and this is another tenet of Council for Unity, it's about removing your mask and becoming an authentic person. One of the things that has plagued men for millennia is this facade that you have to show invulnerability and you have to show bravado. And if you show weakness or compassion or emotion, it's a sign of weakness. So you have men, especially these young men, basically hiding behind that facade and creating an image of themselves that wasn't true. So what I was able to get them to do was to take their mask off. And as they began to share their journey, especially the pain that they had experienced, the victimization, also the victimizing of other people, a great empathy began to occur. And I think maybe one of the most profound things was that they discovered they could be themselves more with this group than they could with their friends.
Wow.
And that's amazing, because where do you want to be in life? I want to be where I can be me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be where I got to play a role and become somebody else, because it means nobody's ever going to know me.
That's right. That's right. And that's so true. I can speak firsthand because I was one of those high school kids, and I wasn't shy or anything.
You sure weren't.
Right, I wasn't shy, but it was just amazing because, so many of us were so different, but yet Council for Unity gave us a commonality that enabled us to work towards a goal.
And the interesting thing too, I think, how do you learn about other cultures? For most of the kids in Dewey, and probably most of the kids in public education, when they experience curriculum, most of them really don't see their cultures being venerated in our history books or even in our literature courses. So you really grow up not understanding the deep, profound human journey and accomplishments that exist in so many cultures that we're never going to learn about. So one of the great things about Council was that all of you became ambassadors of your own experiences and your own culture. And I think the conclusion was, that we began to see the common humanity of everybody, which then created this tremendous bond, which has been unbreakable even till today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We don't have to see one another. All of us that were in Council for Unity from high school. And when we do, it could be 5 years later, 10 years later, and we're literally like a family.
Nothing changes.
Yeah, nothing changes. And the wonderful thing about it, Bob, is that even at this time period, when we're dealing with so much racial tension around the world, I can rest assured that my brothers and sisters from Council for Unity that are Asian, that are white, that are every race, I can rest assured that they're mostly on the right side of the issues. And so that comes from the training of sensitivity, right? Understanding one another.
Well, you know, Vera, one of the things that I think, and I mentioned this in another interview, when you think of how profound our creation was, put this into perspective. We have struggled with issues of race and hatred of cultures for 200 years. The best that America could come up with was to create laws in the hope that those laws would lead to tolerance, would end racism, and end violence, and end hatred of people from different cultures. And it really hasn't worked. And when you think of the significance of Council for Unity, picture this. 200 years in Bensonhurst during a time of integration in New York City and all the violence that resulted from that, our original members made a statement without even being aware of it. This problem that has plagued this country for 200 years stops in this place, in this time, not by mandate, not by laws, but by our intention to end it. That is revolutionary. It has never been done. And this is the historical significance of the Council for Unity, because it interrupted a trend that that we're still struggling with. Obviously, when we look at what's going on today after the passing, the murder of George Floyd. Mm-hmm. And God knows we've never been more in need than now. But that's the significance of council. We stopped a systemic, ongoing culture of racism and hatred of immigrants. We never put any welcome mats out when people came here. We hear it now. You got some of these lunatics screaming at American Indians to go back where they came from. Mm. They should be saying, you should go back where you came from. We're here. Mm-hmm. So, you know, this is I think the profound symbolism of what we represent and why it is so relevant in today's climate.
Absolutely. It's the answer. It's not, and it's not, what's wonderful is it's not a religion.
No.
It is an ethical expression, is it not? It's moral, it's ethical, it's
I think it's spiritual.
It's spiritual, yes. It's the higher spirituality.
You know, I mean, I think it's, you know, and I've been a big student of myth all my life, but one of the historical problems with religion is that the clergy in most religions has really created barriers between and among us. Mm-hmm. And we've had 2,000 years of religious wars, and religion in its worst scenario has actually promoted intolerance rather than eliminating it. So once you transition from a parochial mentality that my religion's the only religion, if you don't believe in what I believe in, you're going to hell, as opposed to a spiritual context where we see a power that has made us different. And ultimately the challenge is to accept our differences and see that the light that's in me, that eternal light that's in me, is in you too. And whatever you look like is not going to distract me from seeing that inner core. And that's what council does. We don't really preach it, but our members look at one another, and the love that they beam back and forth is really the result, I think, of an awareness of some kind of spiritual presence that as long as we look, Joseph Campbell kind of said this, and it had a profound effect on me. When he was being interviewed by Bill Moyers, they were talking about God in one of the interviews on the power of myth. And at the conclusion of the interview, Bill Moyers said to Joseph Campbell, he said, well, Joe, my experience with myth has really, I'm a Southern Baptist, and myth really made me a lot more tolerant. I began to understand the human journey in other religions. I saw that they had the same questions that I had, and that they got very similar answers. He said, so that's what I got out of myth. He said, but what about you, Joe? We've been discussing God for the last 2 hours. How do you experience this thing? And Campbell leaned forward and looked at Moyers, and he said, I'm looking at it, Bill, and so are you. I cried for 10 minutes.
Wow.
And that's us. When we look at each other, that's what we see.
Absolutely. And guys, for the audience, this is real. This what Bob is speaking has been the evidence in his life for decades. And so I'm just so fortunate to have him in my life, and also to share him with you guys, and to share his vision of Council for Unity. So please, I'd like to just briefly talk about, you visiting the prisons and things like that. What do you see when you see an individual, let's say a minority, Black or Hispanic, that ends up in prison? What are you looking for in that individual when you visit the prisons to try to help them and assist them, or to understand them? How do you see that individual? That's the question.
Well, I was in a gang as a kid, and then I got involved in stuff more serious than that. I lost most of my friends to drugs, to violence, to jail. I never thought I was going to get out of the street. I experienced what inmates experience: rage, depression, self-hate, which makes it possible for you to not only hurt other people, but to become very self-destructive. And one of the reasons why so many people turn to drugs and alcohol is that their reality is so unacceptable and so painful that they have to get out. And so it's not that I'm looking at color at all. I'm looking in there, and I still carry those dragons. So when I look at them, I'm not distracted by their gang affiliation or their race or whatever. I'm looking at someone who, how can I put this? I know why they're bleeding. Oh. And I don't have to even tell them. There's one thing, when you're in the life, you just know. I mean, when people, the FBI has asked me, how come you're not dead? When I went into Suffolk County Correctional Facility in 2007, and it's on the website. I had a meeting with Sheriff Vincent DeMarco and Butch Langhorne, who was the assistant to the sheriff, and Butch is on our board. And so Riverhead High School school district took the program. We created a council for unity in the community. The clergy joined, the Rotarians joined, the Chamber of Commerce joined. We integrated the community. The police department joined, and the jail was the last piece. So I went in and did a presentation about what council could do, because we were already in Sing Sing. And when I left, they made fun of me. They still do. And they said, come on, this guy's crazy. These guys are killing each other. We got a major gang problem in here. There's violence on the tiers. And this guy's going to bring all these gang leaders together, and he's going to end up having them sing Kumbaya, and they're going to end the violence. He's nuts. He said, but you know what? We got to take the program. And if you go on the website and you click on the video, the 8 Steps to Becoming a Dragon Slayer, Butch Langhorne at the end of the inmate presentation talks about how Council for Unity in less than a couple of months transformed the whole prison. I had about 35 gang leaders from the Crips, the Bloods, MS-13, the Latin Kings, Aryan Brotherhood in that room. Somebody wasn't supposed to walk out of there. And I was in there by myself. And within a half an hour, I basically told them I had a debt that I had to pay. A guy saved me. And I got a second chance. And I said, the only way I can pay that debt is to offer you what I got. I was in the life. I have the same problems you do. I still have them. And this is a chance for change. And you can take it, or you can go back to the shadows where you came from. So it's bad enough you're in hell, but to have to live under the mantle of violence every day, where you get up not knowing who you have to kill or who's going to kill you, just compounds that hell. The Council for Unity will end that for you. And it did. So if you go on the website and look up and click on the video, Founders and Forefathers, you're going to meet Chino Blue, who was the first crown of the Latin Kings, who was one of the original members of Council for Unity. And he talks about the original gang leaders joining council. And then you meet Charlie Saunders, who was the leader of the Bloods and the worst inmate in the facility. And you hear Charlie eloquently discussing his journey and his transformation. So it's not just that I'm saying this. It's validated by every video on that website. You see somebody wearing green and you haven't seen a miracle in the last 10 years, click on it. You'll see plenty.
Wow. Wow, that's, and it's really inspiring to see how Council for Unity, the idea of Council for Unity was able to merge into the concept of prison reform.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how did that happen? How did you begin to merge them together? Because, you know, Council for Unity is just this idea of uniting by understanding and comprehension what's different in all of us. And then here it is, you're like, well, let's take this to the prisons.
Well, the same thing that defined our journey, because Council has a very, very innovative and rich curriculum, which is mythologically based. There are 4 pillars of Council for Unity that address the deepest needs in human beings. Whether you're a kid in the 3rd grade or you're somebody in prison doing 40 years. And those 4 pillars are the pillar of family. Everybody needs a family. And the Council family is committed to your growth and development and committed to allowing you to remove your mask and be an authentic person. The 2nd pillar is unity. Who doesn't want to be safe? Who doesn't want to be free from prejudice and racism and violence? So unity brings everybody together. I'm safe. And it brings everybody together. And now I'm living in an environment of tolerance and respect. Now I want you to think about a person's reaction to this. This isn't some ideal, Pollyanna concept. Our mythology goes to the heart of what people are starving for. The 3rd thing is self-esteem. In our materialistic culture, where status is defined by what you own, what you wear, and the dilemma of never being satisfied because you can never buy enough. And at some point, you're going to realize that what you can put your hand on is not going to give you peace. And so a lot of people have huge self-esteem issues. There's a 50% divorce rate in this country. I see this in all of our chapters. Some of the histories of our children and what they've been through is horrific. And in a regular classroom, where the goal is to get you promoted and get you graduated, your needs aren't going to be met. So if you have an army of kids coming in with 1 million holes in them and prisoners as well, there's a vacuum there that cannot be filled. So the Council's 3rd pillar of self-esteem is predicated on the fact that we need to build each other up, that we need to start instilling confidence and self-worth, which is what everybody wants. And so that's another profound thing. Now, if you're an inmate, This is a huge thing. Right now in Suffolk County Correctional, we're doing our Dragon Slayer curriculum. The first heroic act of the hero in the story, who I made just like them. He's abandoned. He's got no prospects. He's vilified by his community. He's perceived in a negative way. And his first heroic act was to deny the image that his detractors had of him. He refused to let their negative perception define him. And his basic message was, you don't tell me who I am. I create who I want to be. And so we've talked about how many of you in here, these are the inmates, most of them are gang related, have been negatively perceived in your life. Every hand goes up. How many of you believed that negative perception? Every hand went up. How did you behave? Because you believed that in a very self-destructive, violent way. And this is where we have to start in reversing that, inviting them to create the higher, a greater image of themselves. And counsel begins to put those pieces together. The inmates go around and will share with each other the talents and the abilities that they see in one another. So instead of being an environment where they're getting torn down, they're getting built up. Yeah. And the final thing is empowerment, where they're actually trained to run the group. I run the group in the beginning. I told them, if I have to run the group and solve your problems, I'm your daddy. And if I'm your daddy, you're never going to be a man. So I need to be replaced. And the only way I can do that is to empower you to replace me.
Wow. So
when you think, why does it work? You look at those four things: the need for family, the need for safety, the need to be free from discrimination, the need to have a positive self-image, the need to have influence. That's what we bring.
Yeah. And that makes so much sense, because when you see people that are biased or racist, there's something in them that's lacking. And for the most part, that's always self-esteem. Because yes, if your self-esteem were positive, then you wouldn't have any reason to feel better about yourself because you're putting someone down. So the core issue is self-esteem, and Council for Unity enables everyone that becomes a part of it to find reasons within themselves to feel empowered, to feel valuable, and then appreciated and loved by others.
Yes, absolutely. And that's been a 45-year journey, and it's never let up. I mean, we're starting to go national now. One of the guys in the video, Founders and Forefathers, which is on the website, is my fraternity brother. He grew up with me. He was the good kid and I was the bad kid. And I went on a rampage, beating the hell out of everybody I could get my hands on, because I was bullied when I was younger, and I became the dragon. And he was the best kid in the neighborhood. And for no particular reason, I wanted to show who I was, and I started to beat him up. And I wanted him to give up, and he wouldn't. And the more I beat him, the more he would not yield. And he humiliated me by not fighting back. And it was my first lesson that might doesn't make right. He beat the hell out of me without putting his hands up. And he never lied. And so we became inseparable. And he loves Council for Unity. He's a member of the Knights of Columbus in Pennsylvania. We had a Zoom meeting like this. I sent them the curriculum. They are launching us to schools, to prisons, to police departments, and they are global. They're not only national, they're global. And you would think they found the next set of commandments in Council for Unity. So this is your thing. If you want to talk about what your legacy is, it's never gonna, it's unending.
Yeah,
unending.
And the potential is limitless, you know. This can assist schools how to develop children so that they could be the greatest character that they came here to be. It can help develop even politicians, teachers, parents. There's no arena that this organization cannot assist to help make the world a better place.
You know what the tragedy of all this, Vera?
Mhm.
If you look at the opportunity that exists today, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter. If all the good people who want to see change and reform got together, look at the challenge they would face to create something that's gonna address the changes that have to occur. They'd have to meet together. You'd have to get an integrated group, Black, white, Latino, Asian, Jewish, you name it, whatever. They'd have to meet for months to come up with a concept. They haven't got the time to do that. Then they'd have to develop a product. Because if you're going to institute change, well, you have to deliver a product to schools, to communities, to law enforcement. You have to hire a staff to deliver your model.
Mhm.
It's impossible. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's
Not to mention the need is also intracellular, and you don't just have that with developing a curriculum. It takes work and nurturing and cultivating the concept of love and acceptance and connecting with people that are different than you.
And Vera, the other big thing is, so let's say they did do all that. It's never been battle tested. So if you're going to go to a community or a school system or a law enforcement agency, you're offering them something that never existed before.
Mhm.
Do you know how difficult it is for somebody to try something that's never been tested? Now you look at Council for Unity. We're in the schools, we're in the communities, we're in law enforcement, River Police Department as a part of council. We're in 6 correctional institutions. We've been battle tested for 45 years. So when we go to present something to any of these systems, we actually have people, whether they're educators or FBI or Secret Service or police detectives, that are in the model.
Mhm.
So if they're talking to their counterparts, it's not Bob DeSena, who's not a cop, talking. It's like, hey, I've been in Council for Unity as a police officer since 2007. And let me tell you the miracles that I'm witnessed. This thing's changed my life.
Mhm.
So this is the one thing that we bring, is that our model has been battle tested. No one's going to be able to create it. It would take forever
Yeah.
to duplicate what we have. So our basic message is, don't reinvent the wheel. The product is here.
Right. Try to
Take it
and real and genuine.
and take it.
Yes, yes. So can you tell me, with Council for Unity, the motto and idea of Council for Unity in this modern time with what the world is facing, how would we as a group define all lives matter as opposed, or in relation to Black Lives Matter? Not the actual groups, but the meaning of what it is.
Well, I think the big problem is that people don't understand that Black lives haven't mattered for 400 years.
Mm.
And here's a simple to all the counter protesters. You want to end violence? You want to end conflict between African Americans and police? Stop your fucking racism and it'll end tomorrow. That's the bottom line. You don't like violence? You don't like anarchy? You don't like protests every other day? You don't like people taking a knee? Stop being a racist and it'll all go away.
Mm.
So I think Black Lives Matter is something that's got to get addressed immediately, so that we can move on to the next phase, which is, look, for us, in 1975, Black Lives Matter, when we all came together to stop racism between Italians and Blacks. When we did a lifting of hands, and the same racial conflict between Italians and Blacks that took place across the street ended with Nikki Chipetta and Nelson Chilenis shaking hands. That was Black Lives Matter. We changed a system, and we changed it permanently where we plant our flag. And so I think that, it's incumbent on all of us to explore the damage that racism has done, to not only to Black people, but to white people too, because it's poisoned them. Don't get me wrong. There are, I believe, most other cultures, white, Latino, Asian, or whatever, hate racism. I think when this thing first started and you looked at the protests, everybody was there. You weren't looking at just Black people protesting racism. From what I saw, I mean, you're looking at thousands, hundreds of thousands of people from the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
There were snapshots of great cops taking a knee or shaking hands with protesters. And then somewhere along the line, I think the fringes from both sides began to get all the publicity. And if we don't reverse that, we're going to head, what do those fringe groups create? Chaos.
Right.
When you have chaos, this is when dictatorships come, because people will opt for security over their rights. That's a primal thing. So we better get on the ball. And this is why Council for Unity is so significant. It's because we change all that.
Yeah.
We change all that. We don't have to talk about Black Lives Matter in council. You ask any African-American who's ever been in Council for Unity and ask them, do we have to do something special about Black Lives Matter? They're like, what are you, crazy? It's mattered since I've been in here.
Absolutely.
And so does everybody else's life matter.
Absolutely.
We love each other.
And because we cultivated a unity that is unmatched in the world. I look at the Black Lives Matter idea of it, not the group, that there's triage. When you go in an emergency room, they take the person who's most in trouble. And so when we look at the things that are happening in the world, that's what Council for Unity does. They are the doctors and nurses in the ER that determine who needs their help the most.
That is a great analogy. That is a great analogy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's just a dynamic group and organization, and I want to do all that I can to get the word out. And
well, here's the thing. I'm seeing comments from Merlene, my mother, and Eric. I got to give a shout out to Merlene. I really do, because when she was in council, everybody drove me crazy every day. Every day. And she would protect me and tell them all to shut up and leave me alone. So I started calling her Ma. She was my protector. And Eric, you do look great.
Oh, it's good to have you guys on. We have a Zoom thing going.
Are other people seeing this, or just Darlene and Eric?
They are seeing you and I speak on my YouTube channel. They're seeing you and I speak, Darlene and Eric. Hi, guys.
And where is everybody else from Council for Unity?
They're on the YouTube page. So they're commenting, like Franco's there. I'm trying to see who else. Donna Mickelson is there.
Oh my God.
Don't stop that.
Yeah.
Hi, Dad.
It's great. It is great to see you guys. And Council for Unity has grown so much throughout the years. I graduated John Dewey High School in 1997, and the program has just expanded so much over the years and has done so many wonderful things. Just way too many to mention. But it's just such an amazing program. It helped me get through high school. It helped me reach my potential. It did help develop me as a public school teacher, and now as a professor at a lecturer at Kingsborough Community College. And it really helped develop how I currently teach future educators. So I can't thank Council for Unity enough for all of the wonderful things it did for me personally.
Well, I got news for all of you, really. You have to all, if we're going to change anything, it can't be that, you know, we've inherited this incredible benefit and this new image of ourselves and this capacity to have empathy for other people. Every one of you has to become messengers, which means that you direct people to the website. If we're going to spread, look, if you don't have a handful of seeds and you don't throw them in the wind and they don't end up in the ground, nothing's going to grow. And so I think if I had to charge our members with anything, it would be to accept the fact that you are a messenger. You're a witness to the truth. You're a witness to change, and you can't keep that a secret. And so, and everybody in your network, I'm not asking you to, you know, sell the program. Just say, hey, do me a favor. Are you concerned about what you're looking at today in the media? Well, I want you to look at something. I want you to go on the Council for Unity website. Here it is, www.councilforunity.org. And I want you to look at all those videos. You got videos in there of elementary school kids singing this Unity song, which the first time I saw it performed, I cried. And you're looking at inmates, you're looking at students, you're looking at all a huge demographic transforming before your eyes. This has got to spread. Otherwise, we're going to be watching the damage that's occurring today instead of being catalysts to change it. So I'm charging every one of you. Go to your friends, go to everybody you know, get on social media, beg people, go on that website. If you want change, it's in front of you. And then who knows? One of them may know a philanthropist, or one of them may know a superintendent or a police commissioner who looks at this and says, wow. And that's how we're going to grow. I can't do it. It's got to come from all of you.
And it's change without a personal agenda. What is the agenda, Bob?
What's the agenda? Well, that's interesting. In the simplest of terms, if you have a quarter in your pocket and you take it out and you look at a Latin inscription, which defines what this country is supposed to be, it says e pluribus unum, out of many, one. America right now is at risk because we are not living up to that. We're really divided, and we are not going to survive as a people or as a culture until we come together for a common good. So when you ask me to sum up Council for Unity, that's it. We are about as close to the American dream as any entity in my life, because we are that stem that holds the petals of a multicultural flower. We're that unifying force. We are out of many, one. And that's council. So what's the agenda? Save America. Because if we don't do that, and we don't find, it's maybe not just Council for Unity, but if we don't find other energies out there that are going to bring us together, it's over. And so that's the agenda. The agenda is unity. You want to be safe? You won't get it without unity. Yes. You want to be free from racism and hatred and bias? Well, you're not going to get it without unity. That's it. And it's so simple. You would think that somebody would have created this 100 years ago. It's amazing to me that nobody ever created a Council for Unity. Yeah. I mean, because that's who we're supposed to be.
Yeah. And the wonderful thing is it's unity by also preserving the different cultures that make up the melting pot and appreciating each of them for what they've contributed to this dynamic.
You know, Vera, you just reminded me of another profound concept that's relevant to council. You know, when you look at how we define different cultures, African-American, there's a hyphen there, African-American, Italian-American, you know, Latino-American, Asian-American, or whatever, there's a reason for that hyphen. If you're American, and we've all come from another place, except for Native Americans. We've all come from another place. We all have rich cultures that have enriched us profoundly, whether it's in terms of the food that we eat, the music that we listen to, the literature that we produce. But we all have a unique history, and we've all come from unique environments. If we all became American and lost that, it would be tragic. Council for Unity respects the hyphen. You're African American, learn about your history, learn about your culture, learn about the great things that existed in Africa before the diaspora. You're Italian, you're Jewish, you're Asian, you're Latino. Learn your culture, celebrate it, relish it, share it. And then your obligation as an American is to accept everybody else. And so that hyphen is critical. You have to be both. I'm not giving up being Italian. I love everybody, but I'm not giving up being Italian. I love being Italian.
Exactly.
I love it. I'm not, and if being American means I got to give up being Italian, I'm going back to Italy.
Exactly.
And I also, I want to enjoy. I mean, for me to be in a world without African Americans would be poverty. Without Latinos, without Asians, without Jews, without Albanians, without every other culture, we would be impoverished.
Wow.
I'll give you something that I'll never forget. And it was from Mark Middleton, who is now a reverend, a minister. We were practicing in room 102 for a Martin Luther King Day in the auditorium. And the plan was that Mark was going to read the I Have a Dream speech. And the rest of us, about 40 or 50 of us, and we were really a very, very diverse group, that as he was delivering the I Have a Dream speech, and we were rehearsing this, and all the lights were out in room 102. And every one of us had a candle. So as Mark was delivering, white men, black men, Jews, and Gentiles, every council member lit a candle and you could see their face. And all of a sudden, Mark's eyes fill up with tears and he delivered Dr. King's speech. Everybody's hair stood up. We were enthralled. And when it was over, we said, Mark, what happened? You know what he said? He said, when I saw all your faces, I remembered Dr. King's last speech when he said he'd been up to the mountaintop and he might not get to the promised land, but he got up to the mountaintop and he saw it. He said, and it dawned on me that what he saw looked just like us.
Wow. Wow. Wow, this is so inspiring, guys. I know that you guys are you guys are probably just silent in your seats because I am. I just want you to keep talking.
I lost it when that happened. Because he was right.
Yeah.
That was Dr. King's dream. And what he saw in that promised land was us. Everything that he said, his dream was what we look like. And it does, and where else does it exist? I wish I knew, but it exists with us.
Yeah. We get to live it, right? So I'm looking at an incredible book here that when I read it, I underlined so much in this book. It was wow. That's all I have to say. This is probably one of the best books I've ever read. And you are the author. What?
I don't think I could write it again.
Right.
It's interestingly enough, Danny Gottlieb, who is a Council for Unity alum, he did the cover.
Wow.
And the characters in the Lifting Your Hands are all of our original members. Anybody who saw A Flower for Dorothy, they're in that book.
Wow.
And I'm looking at Kathy. Kathy was there when we staged the Lifting Your Hands. And Kathy will remember that after we put on that production, you had a racially divided audience after the Howard Beach incident. And maybe 300 people got up out of their seats and came on stage. It was absolutely a moment, an epiphany.
Wow.
But A Lifting Your Hands is also in Chrysalia. Two of the tribal leaders, you don't know what race they are, but if you look closer, you could tell. There's a handshake between, and obviously an African-American tribal leader and an Italian tribal leader. And it was the handshake between Nikki and Nelson Ennis.
Mhm.
So if you're in Council for Unity, don't get me wrong, that Chrysalia is profound on multiple levels, but it's a metaphor for what Chrysalia did.
Right.
She created a Council for Unity in a divided world the way I did in 1975.
Mm.
But she did it as a woman with more power than I'll ever have.
Wow.
So the reason that book got written, the precursor to that is The Dragon Slayer. And it's a story, I wrote it. Like everybody else, I'll do it tomorrow. I wanted to write Dragon Slayer for 20 years.
Mhm.
I always had a reason not to get up the next day and do it. And I went to visit my son in California. I was bored out of my mind. He had a yellow legal pad, and I wrote the Dragon Slayer myth in about 45 minutes.
Wow.
And I gave it to my son. I said, Nick, what do you think? He goes, Dad, this is a movie. Well, that became a curriculum, but there's a problem. The Dragon Slayer is a male. And even though at the end of the fairy tale, his legacy is to bring all the little boys and all the little girls in the kingdom to the cave where he found his sword and his mask to kill his dragon. And like me, he knows all these kids have dragons too. And he also knows that the weapons they need are in that cave. And the story ends with all the children had to do is pass through the dark entrance. So when you look at our induction, it's always led by two dragon slayers. Kathy was one of the bearers of the Dragon Slayer weapon. We've had, our male and female leaders carry that sword and mask. And what do? Before these kids take their oath, the end of the myth comes alive because the youngest little boy and the youngest little girl received the Dragon Slayer weapons, representing the next generation of Council for Unity Dragon Slayers. But the problem was that the Dragon Slayer was a male. And it dawned on me that the young women, God, when I think of female leadership, I don't know what the heck I fed you, or what you drank, but my God, we probably have more female leadership in Council for Unity than males. When Kathy was in, the whole exec board was female.
Yeah.
Literally, Council for Unity became a training ground for scary women. They needed an icon. And Chrysalia is an amalgamation of every powerful Council for Unity woman who ever came into the program.
Mhm.
And that's why I wrote it.
Wow. It's beautiful.
I could write another book that Kathy would not be happy with at all.
We have people engaging here. Kathy is actually, she wrote, she's in the feed here. She wrote, thanks for doing this. So she's there. We have Jeffrey Lane. Hi. Sean Hammer, how are you? And Kennedy Love, how are you? Sean Hammer made a statement that I wanted to read to you. So someone in the audience made a statement and I wanted to get your thoughts. He said, I hate to say it, but division through diversity has destroyed this country. What are your thoughts on that?
Diversity has destroyed this country?
Well, he said, right, division through diversity has destroyed this country.
Well, I guess everybody should have stayed in Europe or wherever else they came from.
Yeah, he said, if we're not united in ideology, then we are not united.
Oh, I see. Well, I think maybe he's being misinterpreted.
Mm-hmm.
We inherit diversity. Who's American? Who lays claim to that? Even America as a culture, when you think about it, the things that are uniquely American is our legal system and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That's political. Music, jazz especially, which came out of the African American experience. The 4th of July, Thanksgiving, but all the other holidays that we celebrate are from our cultures: Passover, Christmas, Kwanzaa, and so on. So we must confront diversity. The great thing about myth, and this maybe will help him understand, I think the question really should be, why are we diverse? If you believe in a higher power, and this is a real struggle because the answers are not apparent. Right. If this higher power decided to create us, why did he make us so different? What's the purpose behind that? And I think I know what the purpose is, and it's in Chrysalia. Mm-hmm. When you think of all the different religious disciplines out there, all of them believe that they have an exclusive path to the top of the mountain. And they believe that their holy works are the steps in the ladder to get you to the top. And you've got 100 of them, and they're all climbing that mountain from a different perspective. And they're not witnessing each other climb that mountain because they can't see, or they're forbidden to see each other. This is where the diversity issue and the breakthrough from parochialism to spirituality begins. When you get up to the top of that mountain, and all of a sudden you see people who don't believe the way you do, and they're getting up there too, from the books that they've read, the first epiphany that hits you is, how the hell did you get up here? You're not supposed to be able to get up here. My way is the only way. And so the awakening, when everybody does get to the top of that mountain, the awakening is, well, which one of these paths is cursed and which one of these paths are blessed? Mm-hmm. And the only answer you can come up with is that thing, whatever it is, inflected in all of us through our diversity, a chance to find that spiritual core. And until we get to the top of the mountain and see that light in everybody who doesn't look like us, that's your ideology. You don't get that. You had 2,000 years of religious war, and the rate we're going now, it's not going to stop. So that's the confrontation. That's the journey we have to get out of. And I believe that there's a lot of ecumenism that's going on. That I mean, when I was a Catholic, I was taught in my catechism classes that the Jews killed Christ and that they deserved all of the persecution that they got. And they actually used a quote from the Testaments. In the trial of Jesus, when Pontius Pilate supposedly said, I wash my hands of the blood of this innocent man. And the Testament says, well, his blood be upon us and upon our people. Well, Christians use that as an excuse to persecute Jews, and that's the source of anti-Semitism. It's insane. Right. It's insane. And I was told if you went to a Protestant church or a synagogue, you committed a mortal sin and you were going to go to hell. And ultimately, what that made me realize when I got involved in myth is that the clergy for centuries had one specific purpose. The only way they could keep their power is to prevent us from experiencing one another. And so instead of seeing the commonality of all religions, the same questions being asked, the same answers being discovered, we were prevented from seeing that. And so what did we do? We demonized people who didn't believe the way we did. That has got to end. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Chrysalia ends it in the book.
Yeah, she does. What you're speaking about kind of makes me think about the tone that is even happening within religious groups today who are racist. So how do you reconcile a love for, God and the higher good, but yet, we see all of this racism coming from the religious sections.
Well, you really got to qualify that.
Yeah.
Because I have a different experience. In some extremes in religion will use the hate that they experience and try to find spiritual justification for that.
Mm.
There are shocking evidences of genocide in the Bible. In the Old Testament, Numbers 31, when I read this, that was the end of me being a parochial individual. God tells Moses to gather the tribes of Israel, to go into the land of Midian, smash it like a cup, kill all the men, kill all the boys, kill all the women of known men, and take the virgins for yourselves as concubines. Now, the real question is, did God give that order? Or did a people who were invading another people need to have a religious excuse to do what they do? So I think where you see this, Vera, is with a lot of evangelicals. But if you went to the last induction of Council for Unity, there was a rabbi, an imam, a minister, and a priest. And they all gave a spiritual invocation to our kids.
Mm-hmm.
This Dr. Khan, who created this Islamic center in Westbury, Long Island, he's used it as an ecumenical center. And I go there. There's rabbis, ministers, imams, priests, gurus from Hinduism and Buddhism. And he's created a council for unity for religion.
Wow.
And if you look at it, even with the Pope, there are a lot of bridges being built and a lot of barriers being breached. And I do think that there is a very strong ecumenical movement. Mm-hmm. However, on the darker side of that, you're looking at what you're looking at in certain parts of this country, mm-hmm. where the level of bigotry and how in God's name you could follow Christ and say some of the things that they say. Mm-hmm. It's frightening.
Absolutely. In Chrysalia, can you like develop more and highlight more? What is the dragon? The dragon is something that we all possess, right? So yes. What is, if you can give us an idea of what that dragon is that all of us possess, how is Chrysalia going to help us get to know that character within ourselves?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that have to be explored. When you think of mythology and religion, and you look at the religious energies in the universe, whether it's Zoroastrianism that was practiced by the Persians, there are these forces of good and evil. And good usually is associated with a sky god who hates chaos, gives us laws, and is the force of reason. And then there is the other energy, the darker energy, which is instinctive and instinctual. And that is our animal nature. Well, the thing that occurred in the East that hasn't occurred in the West is that in Eastern thought, when meditation became the goal, in the East, the realization was that this conflict in the universe between God and the devil is really a metaphor for the same conflicts that go on inside of us every day. Mm. And we make decisions every day based on these impulses. If anybody saw Animal House, which was hysterical, that there was a scene where they're all drunk, and one of the frat brothers has this 14-year-old girl up in his room, and she's drunk, and she falls on the bed, her top comes off, and his eyes pop out of his head, and a devil in red pops up on his left shoulder, and I'm not going to say what he said, but basically he was telling the kid, get her. And he's starting to act on this, and an angel pops up on the other side and says, Charles, if you lay one hand on that girl, you'll never forgive yourself. So what we're really looking at in that instance, which is very real, is that we're looking at two contradictory energies that exist inside of us. And we have to make decisions every day about which one of these energies that we're going to give, that we're going to allow to drive our bus. And I'm going to get to the dragon in a second. There's a great tale of a little boy in American Indian culture, and the chief says, I have two dragons, two wolves, might as well be dragons. I have two wolves who live inside of me, and one of them is fierce and cruel and vicious and intolerant and dangerous, and the other is kind and compassionate and loving. And the little boy says, well, which one of those wolves do you favor? He said, the one I feed. And so every day we are looking at these opposite energies. And here's where Chrysalia gives you an answer. And it's not just her, it's every great spiritual leader.
Wow.
Well, I'm going to give it to, no, I didn't get to it yet.
Yes, go ahead.
Chrysalia can't change her world until she changes herself. And boy, is she loaded with dragons, including anger and violence. And so she has to go into the forest. She has this dream, which actually is a real dream that a myth student had when I was teaching myth, and asked her for permission if I could use it, because it's an archetypal dream. Everybody could identify with this dream. But Chrysalia has to overcome two things, as did Christ and as did Buddha. So when you think of these three figures who were about to begin a spiritual journey to change their world, and they had to do basically two things. They had to overcome their ego, and they had to overcome their appetites, as we all do. So if you're going to be a leader and an example, and you're given to, and you're a slave to your body and your appetites, you're not going to be able to put a thought together for 2 minutes. And if you're living your life out of your bodily needs, then the spirit in you remains mute. And so Jesus was tempted 3 times. Buddha was tempted 3 times. And in the story, Chrysalia is tempted 3 times. And those 3 temptations bring her face to face with her dragons. And she is being tested to overcome those dragons, because if she can't, then she can't create a council for unity. And so all of us have dragons. Most of us, there's a guy in Council for Unity right now in Suffolk County a correctional facility who spent a good part of his life in jail. And he says, I don't have a dragon, I am the dragon. And everybody in council, and this is why we're so important, because so many people don't even know what their dragons are. You know what they told him? You don't have a dragon? Who the hell do you think drove the bus to bring you to prison? It sure as hell wasn't you. Your dragon drove that bus. And until you recognize that, you better get used to that color you're wearing, because you're going to be here for a long time. Wow. Well, this Friday, the curtain is going to get pulled back, and he's going to be taking a long look at that dragon. So all of us have to overcome impulse and the darker side of our natures if we're going to accomplish anything great. And if you're a slave to your ego, what does your ego say? Your ego basically says, I am the most important thing in the universe. And when you think of all the stories about redemption, the one time your ego gets annihilated, and anybody here who's had children or loved another person, when that happens, your ego goes right down, is gone. When you fall in love, the other person becomes more important than you. And that's the end of your ego. When you look at the great religious leaders, all the vegetation gods, they allowed us to kill them to make food. So corn and wheat and barley and malt and all the and grapes and all the things that we need to make food and drink our wine and drink our beer, we had to kill a god who suffered and died for us in order to eat. And the conclusion of primitive man was, if I want to get to the afterlife, the only God I see that gets there is the God who loves me more than himself and dies and then comes back again. And if I want that resurrection, I got to annihilate my ego and love the other.
Wow.
And you want to get a definition of hell? Hell is living within the self. Instead of love, you have lust. Instead of sharing your wealth, you have greed. Instead of loving the other person, you lie, cheat, and kill. And so the definition of hell is being trapped in this prison of self. And so that's your dragon. Your dragon's your ego.
Wow. I'm speechless.
Well, it's the truth. And Chrysalia delivers that truth.
Yes, yes. You just essentially gave a spiritual lesson here. I really, really appreciate that. Wow. I'm sure you guys will be very, very inspired by that. Chrysalia is, again, one of the best books that I have ever read. And I have read a lot of books. I can't even count. So I encourage you guys. I have the link in the description box for this book. It's on Amazon by Robert J. DeSena, and it's called Chrysalia. The book,
The Princess of Possibility.
The Princess of Possibility. It will change your life. Literally, this book changed my life. I just wanted to hug it.
You know, what's interesting, Vera, too, is, where do you come up with a name for a book? What dawned on me, I've always loved butterflies. The chrysalis is the cocoon that encases the larva that emerges from something that's a potential into this, going through this incredible transformation to become this beautiful butterfly. Well, Chrysalia, like all of us, has all of these incredible potentials, but a transformation has to occur, an anointing of those inner powers, a discovery of those inner powers has to take place. So we emerge from something that has an animal core and emerge into something that is a beautiful spiritual being. And so Chrysalia was no accident. She is an emerging entity whose potential comes to light through her rite of passage, and she changes the world.
Wow. Yeah, that's why the subtitle is The Princess of Possibility, because within each of us lay the possibility of our evolution.
Absolutely.
Wow. So the link is there. I know I have kept you on a long time.
How long have we been on?
We have been on, we can stay on as long as you want. We have been on, let me see what time it is. It is 7:19.
Oh my God. I think people have pretty much heard about enough from me. So if any of your viewers have, want to share something or have any questions, let's take the mute off and let them jump in. This is their time.
Yeah, if you have questions or anything for
Or you
Bob.
want to share anything?
Yeah, if you want to share, it's really their typing and their writing. So, yeah, we wouldn't be able to hear them. So they just simply be writing. Kennedy Love said, I'm not for Black Lives Matter. It's underlined way to divide. It's in plain sight, but lots can't see.
He's entitled to his opinion.
Yeah. Well, she's saying that all lives matter. But then can you refresh our memory on what you mentioned pertaining to all lives matter? Absolutely. But there is an emergency in regard to events that happen that make it more like this triage. There are people that are in the forefront being damaged at the moment.
Look, I mean, it's very easy for somebody who's uninitiated to have tremendous resentment. Hey, I'm not Black. How come your life matters more than mine? And you're seeing that echoed with guys on motorcycles and people on the other side of the protest. What is not realized is that we have not recognized the incredible amount of damage, personally and socially, that racism has caused. And when you think of servicemen who gave their lives to allow a guy like Colin Kaepernick to take a knee, and men who've died to allow a diversity of opinion, this is key. But I think you hit it, Vera. This is a time of emergency. We have never put this problem to rest. It's not that other lives don't matter. We got a priority here. Mm-hmm. You want to be safe, you better fix this problem. The worst thing you can ever do to a people, and believe me, when I was gangbanging, and the worst thing you ever want to hear out of a person's mouth is, I don't care if I live or die. I got nothing to lose. I'll kill you, your family, and your pets. We don't want to get people to a point where they are living out of such hopelessness that becomes the only recourse. So if you want all lives to matter, I'm with you all the way. End racism and all lives will matter. And Black lives will matter, will go away, because there won't be a reason for them to say it. When Black people wake up and see that they matter, they're not going to protest anymore. So wake up.
Yeah. Yeah, when society shows the evidence that we matter, then that's when things will change.
Well, there has been change, but there's this is a defining moment. And we have an opportunity here to reform the police, to eliminate systemic racism. And look, I'm no bleeding heart. But my spiritual self recognizes that this has to be addressed.
Yeah.
And I also see that there is going to be a universal good that comes out. I mean, look, this planet has been struggling with tolerance since we came out of the slime. I mean, we have invaded and plundered and raped and so on. And either we're going to find out that we're spiritual beings living in a human body, or the beast is bigger than anything else inside of us.
Wow.
And right now, the beast is doing well.
Yes. Wow. Let me check in and see what Erlene, you guys want to chime in? Eric Conti, Catherine, do you want to chime in?
I'm a little afraid of Catherine chiming in. I love her.
No, don't be afraid. Hi.
I'm not afraid.
Bob.
Hi, baby.
Bob, how are you, love?
I'm good. I mean, you're a part of the beginning. I mean, you have witnessed what most people in Council for Unity have not witnessed, because you've spanned.
Yeah, I mean, I was there. I was there from the very beginning. But when you were talking about the spirit, spirituality, and I'm thinking, if you believe in the Big Bang Theory, right? Everything was created from that one moment, right? So whether you believe it was just a scientific event, or whether you believe God created, whatever your beliefs are, but it all started from this one event.
Yes.
And we've come to this point. Then we all carry within us a spark or a light from that one event. So all of us that walk this earth are made from the same matter, because it all originated with that one event. So we all are the same.
Absolutely.
But we don't, we get caught up, and ego is it. And you're right. It's when you get caught up in ego and self, you can't see past that. And a lot of that is fear-based, you know.
It totally fear-based.
Yeah.
If I wasn't afraid, I'd accept everybody. I'm afraid of you.
Right.
You know, you talk about the Big Bang Theory, Kathy. One of the things that's amazing in myth, if you think of the Big Bang Theory, you had chaos, you had gases that were amorphous. And then all of a sudden they kind of congealed and there was this explosion, and out of that matter was created. Now, when you look at all the creation myths, whether it's the Bible, the Greek myth, the beginning is always in chaos. There was darkness. And then what's the next word that comes out? And then light came. And then from light, everything else proceeded. That's just a symbolic explanation of the Big Bang Theory. It's just that the symbols, instead of having scientific explanations, we have symbolic explanation, but we're looking at the same phenomena.
Wow.
Heavy stuff.
I love what you said, Catherine.
Right. We're all, you know, what I, you know, the energy, the spark, the light that, you know, I have in me from my being created is in you, Vera, and, you know, Bob, and, you know, my sister Erlene, and my brother Eric. You know, it's in all of us.
Yeah.
Because we all came from the same originating energy.
If we could only see it, Kathy.
I know.
There's a great video, which I would recommend everybody take a look at, called Finding Joe. It's one of Joseph Campbell's videos. It's profound. I brought it into Suffolk County Correctional, and the assistant to the sheriff said, they're never going to sit still for 80 minutes. When it was over, the guy who ran the Bloods in New York State happened to be in Council for Unity. And he said, every inmate should come down here. It would be the end of suicide, drug dealing. But one of the metaphors, and you just reminded me of it, that there was a statue of Buddha that was covered in dirt, and it was neglected. And someone got the idea to scrape the dirt off. And when they did, it was gold. It was all gold. And the metaphor really was that the fear and the other crap that we surround ourselves with blinds us to the gold that's within ourselves and the gold that's within other people.
Yeah.
And but I love your analogy. That was a great analogy about the Big Bang Theory.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.
LS Cherry says a comedian said to say Black Lives Matter is like saying rainforests are endangered. It's not like saying only rainforests matter and no other forests. It's saying rainforests are being disproportionately destroyed. I like that.
That's a great metaphor.
Yeah.
Because if the rainforest gets destroyed, the whole planet's going.
Yeah.
Where do we get our oxygen from?
Yes,
Good
absolutely.
analogy.
Hi, Rachel. How are you? We have some awesome people joining in on the chat. I just wanted to quote from one of my favorite books again, Chrysalia, Princess of Possibilities. Some of the things that I highlighted, you know, that just stuck out to me, that to me, I think everyone, when they read these books, they'll be underlining the same things I did because they were just powerful. So you wrote on page 20, you said that parochial view of the world replaced the spiritual one. That touched me. You also said that the goal was to have a mystical experience where the inner voices inherent in all could become activated. You also said, wait, there's a quote that is really, really powerful to me. Hold on. I mean, there's just so many in this book that, and just reading the book just activates all of these things that I underlined and quoted that you wrote here in this book. You said, hold on, shucks. I have it all like labeled here. Hold on. You said duality is necessary, and that's innate. That helps us to see the shadow side of ourselves, right? and also improve. You said that the magic will begin. Oh, no, not that. You said the hero conquers themselves first.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, if you could imagine a new awakening. I mean, the hardest thing, and Joseph Campbell has said this, the hardest thing that the modern hero does is become himself. In our lives, our family, the families, people that we love, the people that we fear, everybody is trying to make us over into what they want us to be. There's a great metaphor for that in Star Wars. Darth Vader says to his son, um, Luke Skywalker, come over to the dark side. Come over and experience the power of the dark side. And Darth Vader was really talking about a modern system of materialism and dominance and power and violence. And Luke Skywalker refuses. And that's a metaphor for all of us. Are you going to go over and become the thing other people want you to be? Or are you going to hold true to who you are? The answer to that question defines your life. And the hero's journey is basically predicated on that. He must conquer himself. She must conquer herself. Chrysalia has to discover all of her conflicting energies and assign a power to them and decide which of those powers she needs in order to not only find her own inner strength, but to change the world. I mean, you think of that flower in there. So getting to your point, all of us really are defined by the need to discover who we are. And here's the thing. In all of myth, there's a threshold for every hero and every heroine. The threshold is this. It separates the world that you live in and the world that you know from the world you have not yet experienced. If you stay in the world that you know, you will not discover yourself or the world that exists outside of yourself. So the hero's journey is predicated on crossing that threshold into the world you have not yet experienced. And that's when self-discovery begins. I mean, all the dark challenges that you face, guess what it does? It forces the potential that's been sleeping in you to come to the surface, and you're not going to survive. So this idea of an awakening, when you cross that threshold, you awaken to your inner powers. You awaken to your potentialities. And if you stay where you are, you won't. And so that is the hero's message to us, to cross that boundary, to take risks, and to discover your inner powers, and then to decide what your legacy is going to be. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a family, taking care of your kids, and that's enough for anybody. However, there is always the option to have a bigger footprint and have a wider legacy. Kathy, Eric, and Erlene have a monster legacy. They have a huge, and you have a huge footprint. And so that's another thing for us to decide, well, what am I going to be remembered for?
Absolutely.
So I think, to get back to the hero must discover himself. How strong am I? How weak am I? How do you get those answers?
And I love that you used a female to allow the story to evolve and show us the power within us. I love that, because this is the future, part of the future, a healthy patriarchy, a healthy matriarchy. But we can't get there until each of us slay our own dragons.
Absolutely. And a myth is really about balance and harmony. One of the things that Carl Jung said, that when one side of the personality is given for lack of a better word, too much authority over the rest of the psyche, a fall is coming. And when you looked at in the Iron Age, when we became a male-dominated universe, we've been looking at 2,000 years of male superiority, which has led to solving problems through war and violence, which has led to intolerance and all the consequences of that, which has led to a denigration of the virtues that women bring, like compassion, sensitivity, vulnerability, creativity. Men have been demonizing those things for centuries. And also a denigration of the planet. That the planet is our female source. We're polluting it, we're burning it. And unless that is interrupted, and Chrysalia, in my mind, is announcing that if female energy doesn't come to rescue us at this point and create a world of compassion and a world of empathy and a world of art and a world where emotions play as much a role as all of the rationality, that we're not afraid of compassion and we're not afraid of affection, that's got to happen, or we're going to remain as cruel as we've been.
Yeah, yeah.
And Chrysalia is the I think she's the icon for what needs to be a new feminist movement. The worst thing that can happen to women is that they imitate the worst qualities in men. And I see that in so many ways, where the things that what do you think men love in women? We can be vulnerable and emotional with you. We can't with each other unless you're in council. So, you know, when you think of all the great powers that women bring that transform us, that's got to be given a much wider berth in world culture. If this world was run by women of great depth and compassion, there wouldn't be a nuclear missile in a silo because we wouldn't need it. Mom wouldn't allow it. Mom wouldn't allow it.
Wow. Wow, that was just beautiful. I can't even wow. I just want to keep listening to him. Guys, I know you guys are inspired by him. I'm so glad to be able to share you, Bob, with my audience. If you're just coming in, if you're watching this video a week from now, this is my mentor, my second father.
And you're my baby.
Yes.
My daughter.
Yes, he has inspired so much of the parts of ourselves that need to be birthed so that we can find ourselves and create a better world and slay our dragons. So Chrysalia is not just a book that he wrote, but it is a practical application to the betterment of society.
I believe that I was channeled to write that book. I couldn't do it again. I don't think I could write 2 pages.
Wow.
I'll tell you what I'd be willing to do. If we have enough people who've read the book, and God, there's so many questions and so many hidden mythological messages in there that we need to bring to light, I would be more than happy to do another Zoom and really get into a discussion on the motifs in the book and the messages.
Absolutely, I'll set that up. I put the link to Bob's book in the description, so if anyone wants to go check it out, this will probably be one of the best books you've ever read. To me, you know, when I look at the caliber of the book, I look at it as The Alchemist. You know, I'm sure you've read The Alchemist. That's what this is to me. This is my Alchemist.
You know, it's interesting you said that with this we'll sign off. In the Middle Ages, there was a belief, it was called alchemy, that there was some way that you could take base metals like lead, and that there was a formula that could transform those metals into gold. The real message of alchemy has nothing to do with ore and with metal at all. It has to do with us. the tragedies, the failures, the suffering, the pain in our lives is the base out of which becomes a fertilizer that leads us to compassion and empathy. And so the alchemist has here's your choice. You can either become an alchemist or you're going to end up being one of these lunatics running around with some sick evangelistic notion of the universe. You have a choice in life. When you suffer, when you've been betrayed, and we all will be betrayed. Everyone who's watching this has been betrayed and probably has betrayed somebody at some point. We have all failed. We've lost people. That pain can do one of two things. One, it can be the end of you trusting anything, including yourself. If you've been damaged by love, you may fear it and shun it because it hurts. The opposite of that, so instead of embracing your humanity, you retreat from it. The alchemist is just the opposite. The alchemist takes all of those painful experiences, and instead of having their heart shrink because of the weight of the suffering and tragedy in their life, they come to the conclusion that that's our journey. And the opposite is that through that pain and suffering, they convert that into gold. And the gold is compassion, love, empathy. And that's what the alchemist is supposed to be. That you take the grief in your life, and instead of making you shrink from a deeper human experience, you come to the conclusion that your journey is everybody's journey. And in that understanding, you come to love and compassion. So the alchemist is a good reference point. We better end this thing. It's never going to stop.
Right. Well, let me just read a comment to you. Tracy L. Rivera. She says, if you don't break yourself down and get to know yourself first, others will take your power and define by their standards. Knowing yourself allows others to see the real you. And then she said, knowing your truth allows you to move forward. So thank you, Tracy.
Excellent.
For that. She said, that's my daddy D. God bless you.
All right, Vera, is this going to be shown on YouTube and all that?
Yes, it's going to be shown on YouTube and also on my Zoom. So I'll link the Zoom. YouTube will stay there indefinitely, and day by day, more and more people get to see it as it, they'll see that I uploaded a new video.
Why don't you get a hold of Frank? Maybe he can put it on the Council for Unity.
That'd be wonderful. I can actually put that on the Council for Unity website. Yeah,
Great.
Not on the website. I think Frank.
The alumni page.
Yeah, he's the moderator, so he'd have to attach it. So yes, I'll do that.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Hey, listen, this was great. Thank your audience so much for allowing me to share the Council for Unity journey, and Chrysalia as the princess with the flower who's leading the march.
Yes, absolutely. So guys, Chrysalia, Princess of Possibilities by Robert J. DeSena. Please follow the link to the organization that we've been speaking of, the Council for Unity. It is the answer that is needed to fix what we're seeing in the world today. So thank you so much, Dad, for being here.
Oh, thank you.
Love you so much.
Same here.
So good to see you all. Thanks, Vera. Thanks, Bob. Love you.
I can't stand you.
I can't stand you.
I can't even look at you without getting crazy. Kathy and I can never really say, when we see each other, we both start laughing. It's
love
frightening.
you. Love you.
You too.
Mwah. See you guys.
Bye, guys. So long.
Eric, keep up the good
Thanks,
work.
Vera.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank
Bye,
you so
Ma.
much.
Bye,
Thank you,
Eric.
everyone.
Bye, Eric.